Good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of Quarantine Cooking. It's casserole time. It warmed up just in time to have nice, hot, comforting casseroles, but we're going to do it anyway. So tonight we are making buffalo macaroni and not cheese casserole, and I'll show you what kind of additions are going to go in there. And we're also making a green enchilada spinach casserole. And we're going to use some stuff that we've used before in both of these recipes, but I'm very, very excited, particularly for the macaroni and not cheese, because I have a new kind of not cheese to test out with everybody. So very excited. I'm hoping that this works. Let me let Beth into our waiting room here. All right, there we are. So Beth has now joined us, and I have a special shout out for Beth when we come to our enchilada casserole, but I'll get there in just a minute. First of all, let's prep for our buffalo mac and not cheese casserole first. So I have here some cauliflower. It's about two and a half cups, pretty small. And it includes some of the stems too, not the great big thick ones, but the stems that you see that are kind of on the smaller florets. With both broccoli and cauliflower, the stems actually have a wonderful flavor to them. So if you can chop those up when you're roasting it or steaming it or doing what we're doing tonight, save your stems, the small tender ones. They taste really good. So we have our chopped up cauliflower here. I'm going to drizzle it with a good bit of olive oil, like that, a good pinch of cayenne or chili powder, and a good healthy pinch of kosher salt, and toss that all around so that the oil and the chili pepper or cayenne pepper and salt get nice and mixed around with all of this cauliflower. I'm going to add a little bit more oil. And speaking of Beth and speaking of casseroles, I'm going to tell you all what temperature the oven is set at for casseroles, but I bet Beth can guess, because this is one of the first things we ever had a conversation about in the very first cooking class that we ever did. 350 degrees, right, Beth?
Absolutely.
All right, so we'll dump out all of our cauliflower on a foil-lined baking pan. Make sure it's spread out pretty evenly on there. And we're just going to roast it a little bit for just about as long as it takes to make our sauce. So I'm going to put this in the oven to get just a little bit toasty. And then I'm going to show you a couple of other things that we're going to do with this casserole. So way back when we did salads earlier on in the summer, we talked about making tofu croutons because it's a nice little crispy, chewy, crunchy, very flavorful way to add protein to a salad. That's what we're going to do tonight with this buffalo mac and not cheese casserole that we're making. So I made these tofu croutons earlier, and when they came out of the oven, I tossed them with a little bit of buffalo sauce. So they've got that nice buffalo flavor in there. So those are going to get mixed in to the casserole. Let me turn the camera around so that hopefully you guys will be able to see me at my handy dandy stove. I'm going to turn it just a wee bit more that way. Okay. So in here, I have a pound of pasta that I cooked earlier, keeping it warm the same way we kept warm the pasta when we did our big pasta night. So it's over some hot water, and it's a little clumpy, but it's gonna free itself up because it's sitting on top of that hot water. So it's going to free itself up and mix up really well when we have our sauce done. But the pasta is already cooked and ready to go. So here we have our saucepan. I'm going to grab a little whisk here. And we're going to melt 2 tablespoons of vegan butter, or you can use regular butter, obviously, if you're not doing the plant-based thing. But this is 2 tablespoons of plant-based butter. And we're just going to make one of those very basic sauces, like the ones we've made, just like the pasta sauces. So this is like a vegan bechamel sauce, which is a milk-based, very basic sauce that you can add other stuff to. The base for that is always going to be fat, flour, milk, in our case, plant-based milk. And then we're going to add some cheesy flavored things to it, so it's more like a cheese sauce. So we have our vegan butter melting in here. You can also use olive oil, but I wanted that buttery flavor for this cheese sauce. And while that butter is melting, flour is going to be the other ingredient. So it's going to be 2 tablespoons of flour just as soon as this melts, which it's starting to do. It does smell like butter, so we'll see. I will say that vegan butter on toast is a very sad thing, and I wouldn't recommend it. If you're going to have toast and you're going plant-based, just skip the heartbreak and go straight for peanut butter and honey or something. It's not worth the butter, I hate to say. So we're almost melted in here. So I'm going to start adding these 2 tablespoons of flour. There's 1. And there's 2. And we'll start cooking the butter and the flour together to make that roux. R-O-U-X is a roux. That's what we're making. And that's what's going to help thicken this, make a nice sauce. So what we're looking for is for the fat and the flour to first combine really well. And then it's going to start getting very foamy. It's going to turn into kind of a paste. Right now it's kind of a golden colored paste. And it's starting to get very bubbly and foamy, which is exactly what we want. That means that it's going to be good for thickening up this sauce that we are making. So I'm going to let it cook for just a couple of seconds more. I'm using this rubber spatula to make sure that not only is the flour incorporated into the fat, but also so that it's mixed together really well. Okay. So once we have that, I'm going to take my whisk instead. So here is my whisk, and here is my plant-based milk. We're going to keep this going pretty much the whole time until the sauce is done. Stirring the whole time with your milk and your roux will keep it from getting lumpy. So what happens is all that milk that I poured in just seized up almost immediately with that roux, which is good. That's what we want. That's how we know it's going to thicken it really well. So right now it's got a very pasty, thick texture, but that's fine. But we want it to be nice and thick. This is a nice cheese-y sort of sauce that we're doing here. Add a little bit more. And on the recipe, I have that it's supposed to be 1.5 cups, but it depends kind of on the consistency of the plant-based milk or regular milk if you're not going plant-based that you're using, and how thick you want your sauce to be. The only thing I would caution you is make sure you have enough sauce to coat your noodles and your roasted cauliflower and your tofu, because you want to make sure everything has a nice coating of that cheesy sauce when it gets tossed together. So it's still pretty thick, but it's also going to thicken up a little bit more when we put our shredded not cheese in there. And it also is going to thicken up a little bit the longer it cooks. So I'm going to add just the rest of that milk. I have more, don't worry. Okay. And now I'm going to start seeing what we need to do in the way of seasonings and adding these other things to it. I can always thin it out more. So I'm not going to add much more milk at this point. What you can't do, or what is very difficult to do, is to make it thicker. So I'm going to turn down the heat just a little. Okay. Leave that whisk in there, actually. And we're going to add about 1/2 cup of nutritional yeast. That's one of the things that helps make it taste cheesy. So there's about 1/4 cup here. So 1/4 cup there. Another 1/4 cup here. I know it looks like fish food, but it's delicious, so don't worry about it. So there's a 1/2 cup of nutritional yeast. That's going to thicken it up a little bit too, as it dissolves and becomes part of the sauce here. It also gives it a really nice yellow color, which kind of helps with the cheese illusion. We're also going to add just a little tiny pinch of ground mustard. That not only helps with the color, but it also gives it kind of a sharp flavor, which you would associate with cheddar or a sharp cheese. So that's a nice thing to add also. It didn't make it into the recipe, but it is a good thing to have on hand to use for plant-based cheese sauces. So we've got all that going in there. I'm not going to add salt until the very end, until after I put in this plant-based cheese because cheese, plant-based or regular, tends to be very, very salty, and we don't want to oversalt our sauce. So we've got that in there. I'm going to have this other oat milk at the ready because I can tell already that that nutritional yeast thickened it up a lot. We're going to add freshly ground pepper. But that's always good in just about any kind of sauce. Okay. So fresh pepper in there. Throw that in. Now, I have never used this plant-based cheese before. This is BioLife, just like cheddar shreds, or so it claims. So we're going to see if it really is just like cheddar. See, I tried this stuff so you don't have to. And I looked it up and it said it will melt in sauce just like regular shredded cheese. So let's all do a little drum roll in our heads while I try this out. I'm going to add a very generous handful, about a cup's worth into this. See, it looks like cheddar. Look, it's bright orange. It's nice and shreddy. So let's dump that in there. All right, just like cheddar. It's melting! Melting! This is cool. Now, if it tastes like cheddar, I'll be really happy, but it looks very convincing. It's giving this cheese sauce a nice yellow, cheesy color. I'm going to get a spoon because I am going to want to taste it to see what we need to do in the way of salt. I'm also, well, before I do that, hold on. Okay. So this is very thick now. I think we are going to need probably a little bit more milk. It was melting and then it reached some sort of point where it doesn't look like it wants to melt anymore. It's a little gloppy. Maybe it just needs some more time to sit in its warm, saucy bath and get comfortable. But the texture looks fantastic. But the other thing we're going to add, the other liquid that we're going to add is a half cup of hot sauce. Just like you would put on your wings, we're going to put it in this sauce too, to really give it that convincing buffalo cheesy type flavor. Ooh, now it's a really good color. See, I would totally think this was buffalo cheese sauce. It is buffalo cheese sauce. It's just not, what most people would use for buffalo cheese sauce. It looks beautiful. Let me bring this up to the camera. Oh, I don't want to spill it. But see that beautiful color? It's bright, bright orange. It smells good. It smells like buffalo wings. Let's take our spoon and see what we're doing in the way of seasoning here. Oh my gosh. It tastes like cheese. It tastes like buffalo cheese. And it's a good thing we didn't add any salt because between the cheese and the wing sauce, it is plenty salty enough. So I'm going to crank up the heat just a little bit more. That is really delicious. Oh, I am so excited that this has turned out. I like this cheese so much, I'm going to put in just a little, I'm going to sneak in just a tiny bit more, even though we want some for the top. I'm going to put in just a little bit more to thicken it up. But this is a lot of sauce. It looks good. And I can, I can kind of smell the sauce along with the cauliflower that's in the oven right now. I think this is going to be a winning combo, boys and girls. So while the rest of that cheese is melting in there, and our sauce is getting nice and thick, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the heat. I'm going to get these noodles out of the colander and into this great big pan, because we're going to mix it up in a great big Dutch oven pan here. So, here's our big pan. And let me get a big old rubber spatula for that. Get the pasta from the colander into there. And it's a little clumpy, but because it was over that hot water, it's breaking up really easily and nicely, so that we can mix it with all of our other good stuff in here. So this is just plain old elbow macaroni. I didn't even use whole grain this time. That's how dedicated I am to making a trashy casserole. It's just plain old macaroni. Okay, so that broke up really easily. So now we have all of this delicious plain macaroni just begging to be mixed with all this other good stuff, and that is what we're going to do. We're going to leave the oven on because we have to bake this casserole, but we're going to take our cauliflower out. So look how beautifully that roasted. It's just barely coloring from being roasted, but it smells really good. It's got that salt and that chili powder on the top. So we're going to take our spatula and scrape all of that delicious, salty, spicy cauliflower right into the macaroni. This is the best part about making casseroles. You just pour everything into one pan and you're done. Love it. Oh, look, a piece of cauliflower fell out. I better eat it. Woo, that's good. Spicy. Okay. I have the tofu cubes left. So let's give this sauce. Oh my goodness, I cannot wait to taste this final product. This cheese is so goopy. I love it. We may have a winner. Look at this. Oh my, look at that thick, thick, thick buffalo cheese sauce. Hot dog. It's even kind of stretchy and gooey the same way real cheese sauce would be. Are you excited yet? I'm excited. Okay. So let's mix in the sauce and the cauliflower first. Oh, this is beautiful. If I saw this on a buffet table, I would be afraid to eat it because I would think that it was actual macaroni and cheese with cauliflower in it. By the way, you can also use broccoli in this. If you don't like cauliflower, or if you don't have any, but you do have broccoli, broccoli would be great in this, and it would be kind of a good color too, to have that bright green in with this orange. So here, and we have just the perfect amount of sauce. It's coating all of these noodles and all of the cauliflower without being soupy at all. So here we have that. And then we're going to add our buffalo tofu cubes to that and just fold those in. Holy cow, guys. This is amazing. I mean, I think it's amazing. It smells amazing. Okay. And it's a good thing that I have a big casserole pan. This is a 9 by 13 inch. It's been sprayed with nonstick cooking spray. So we're going to dump all that in. This is a lot of food, guys. So we have the cauliflower in there. We have those tofu bits in there. We have the macaroni and the sauce. And I just have to taste a little tiny bit. I just have to taste a little tiny bit before it gets cooked. Just so I know what I did with my spoon. There it is. Let me taste the pasta and the sauce together before I even put it in the oven. Hallelujah. You know, all those struggles, spicy, all those struggles that I went through trying to make cheese sauce out of cashews and all manner of bizarre things, and all I needed to do was just make a regular old sauce and put vegan cheese in it. Who knew? All right. So you'd think we were done, but we're not done. This is not in the recipe either, but I felt like getting a little crazy. The cheese, the extra cheese is. So let's sprinkle a little bit of that vegan cheese on the top. And then just for fun, because we're feeling crazy, and for a little bit of crunchiness, let's add some of this vegan Parmesan crunchy stuff on the top, where it says the nutritional yeast and garlic and onion powder, and panko breadcrumbs. That's going to make it really crispy on the top. Oh my. I'm glad I don't have to share this with anybody. And then finally, some chopped scallions. So let's sprinkle those all on the top. Oh, it's so beautiful. I cannot wait to see what happens to this in the next 15 minutes or so in that oven. So let me bring this to you so you can see it in all of its glory before it goes into the oven. Look at the green onions. Look at the cheese, sort of. Look at those tofu cubes hiding in there, just waiting to be crunched up. This weighs a ton. This is going to be so much food. I hope it freezes well. So into the oven he goes. And that's where he'll stay for about 15, 20 minutes, which gives us time to make our next casserole, which is that spinach enchilada casserole. So in the recipe, I told you to use about 2 cups of enchilada sauce of your choice. Well, you'll remember that last week, we made those different kinds of chili, right? And I'm using the green chili that we made last week. And this is where Beth gets her special shout out. There was so much leftover chili. And I had mentioned, gosh, I don't know where I'm going to put all this. Well, Beth emailed me and she said, you know, what you can do is let it cool a little bit and then get you some Ziploc bags. And you can freeze it in the Ziploc bags and it stores flat. And it does. So now I have a freezer full of chili that's not taking up all of the space in the freezer. So thank you for that, Beth. But one of those bags was removed and I pureed it down a little more so that it would be more saucy than soupy, if you know what I mean. So there's what we're using. I also made some homemade corn tortillas. We've done that. I think we've done that for this class. These I made a little thicker than what you would find in store-bought tortillas because I wanted them to be very substantial for this casserole. So homemade tortillas. This is just the green chili that we made last week that I had in the freezer and decided I can use this to make enchilada casserole. And then coming back over to this side, I'll show you what we're going to do for the filling. So I've got my cast iron skillet all heated up over there. Just a second. And for the filling, we're going to be using, once again, our pecan taco meat, which is it's about 6 ounces, I think it's 6 ounces of chopped pecans that were simmered for about half an hour in water with soy sauce added to it for flavor. So it's soft. It's got some tooth to it, but it's not like crunchy the way that just plain old pecans would be. We also have about half a pound of chopped mushrooms. Let me show you. These are pretty roughly chopped. They're still pretty big pieces here. And that's because we want this to have a really good toothsome feel to it, like meat would. We've got some onions, which for some reason didn't make it into the recipe that I put online, but certainly we're going to need some onions. So pan's nice and hot, adding that. So some chopped onions, and we're going to let those start to cook. Crank that up a little. Okay. So while those onions are cooking, we'll walk through the rest of that. And we also have 2 cups of pinto beans. If you don't like pinto beans, you can use black beans or kidney beans or whatever it is that you happen to like. And if you don't know how to cook dried beans or you don't make a habit of it, now's a good time because beans actually do freeze very well. If you have an Instant Pot, you can cook a pound of beans in about 40 minutes, which is great. If you have a crock pot, you can stick them in there in the morning, let them go all day and have beans for dinner. Or if you're like me and you forget to put them in the crock pot in the morning and you don't have an Instant Pot at home, you can cook them in about 3 hours or so on the stovetop, which is what I did today. But it's much more economical to get a pound of dried beans because it cooks up to so much more. And you can bag them in portions and put them in the freezer right next to your Ziploc bags of soup and sauce, like Beth has in her freezer. So that's going to be the filling for our enchilada casserole. And we are we're cheating with this casserole, just so you know. We're making it much, much easier than it probably should be because we're not going to roll the individual enchiladas. We're just going to make it a lazy enchilada, an easy, a working person's enchilada casserole, right? Not everything has to be complicated to be good. I hope we all know that by now. So the onions are in there. I'm going to put the pecans in. I'm going to crank up the heat just a little more. The funny thing about these pecans is they soak up some of that nice reddish brown color from the soy sauce. And it actually looks like ground beef when you start cooking with it. It's really, I never would have guessed that that would be such a resource, but I'm starting to use it for a lot of meat substitutions, particularly in Latin dishes where you've got a lot of ground beef going on. It rolls up beautifully, it cooks up beautifully, and once you soak it and cook it, the texture really is very similar in a lot of ways. And it was just fantastic in that red chili that we made last week. So we're going to get this going. These onions are starting to turn transparent, which is a way of saying they're starting to cook up really nicely. The pecans are sizzling. So now I'm going to add these chopped mushrooms. Okay. All right. If I keep cooking like this, I'm going to need a bigger cast iron skillet. And again, we are not going to add any salt to this until the mushrooms are just about done cooking. Because if you put salt on really watery vegetables like mushrooms, it makes them get rid of that liquid that much faster and things will get soggy. If it's gradual and they kind of let go of all that water a little bit by little bit while you're cooking them, it doesn't, the whole pan doesn't fill up with water. If you put salt on them, it extracts the water out a lot faster. So we're not going to do that. But what we are going to do is use about a tablespoon, not a tablespoon, not a tablespoon, about a teaspoon of cumin. You can't have any kind of Mexican flavored dish without cumin, guys. And since I like it spicy, as you know, we're also going to add a good bit of this chili powder to it. That might be a little too much, but I'll eat it anyway. Okay. Woo. Metal handle, very hot. So here we have the pecans, the mushrooms, the onions, the spices, all getting very well acquainted in here. Smells good, it looks good. And this is going to be the filling for our casserole. I'm so used to working with wooden handles that I left this metal handled spatula that I'm using in the pan, forgetting that metal conducts heat. So I had to go rinse it off in some cold water. And next time I'll grab another one of my wooden handled spatulas. You can never have too many wooden spoons or too many rubber or silicone spatulas in your kitchen. You will never have too many of those. You might even say that you never have enough. Okay, so this is starting to cook down. It's taking up less and less room in here, which is good because we're going to need more room in here. But what that means is that our mushrooms are cooking down, which is good, but we don't want them to disappear altogether. So at this point, and also our onions are cooked, but they're not brown, but that's good because we're going to add that good flavor to it. So what I'm going to do at this point is add in our beans. Oh, this filling looks and smells so tasty. And when I cook beans, either in a crock pot or on the stove top, I add about half of an onion cut up, but only cut in half, not minced or anything, so I can fish it out when it's done. So about half an onion, and then whatever hot peppers I have on hand. So I have a whole bunch of shishito peppers. Those are those little soft peppers, and sometimes they're not spicy at all. Sometimes they're very spicy. You just have to kind of take your luck with that. But I had some that were on the verge of not being able to be used anymore, so I threw those into the pot too. And that adds really good flavor to your beans. You can add a couple of cloves of garlic, some bell peppers if you like the flavor of peppers but not the heat, onion, even carrots or celery if you like kind of a very traditional soupy flavor. So this is looking good, guys. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead. I know for a fact it's going to need salt because nothing really was salted all that much. A little bit of soy in the pecans and a little bit of salt in the beans when I cook them. But I know it's going to need plenty of salt. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. The other thing is, this is very nutritious. It's about to be even more nutritious because we're going to add that spinach to it and let the spinach wilt. But beans, very, very good for you. They help to stabilize your blood sugar. Nuts, like pecans, lots and lots of micronutrients and antioxidants. Same with mushrooms, same with onions. So lots of good stuff in there that you can feel good about eating. All right, let's try and see how our seasoning needs to come along. Let me show this to you. So you've got your chunks of mushrooms in there. You've got beans, you've got the pecans and onions and things. Perfect texture. Really good. So now, a big bag of spinach. This is 5 ounces of spinach. It will not be nearly enough. It looks like a lot, but you know, and I know what happens to spinach when you cook it. So I'm piling it all on there. Well, not all. But I'm just gonna kind of roll it around in there because as it starts to absorb that heat, it's going to shrink and shrink and shrink. I'm not going to cover it up yet though, because I don't want the water, the steam that's coming from these leaves to make everything else soppy. So let's add just the rest of this. Okay. Spinach, spinach, spinach. Right. Just a little bit more maneuvering here with this raw spinach on the top. The heat is still on, but not for much longer. Because what I'm about to do is turn the heat off, all the way off, and put the lid on. Because I don't want the spinach all the way cooked. I want it to be wilted enough so that it softens a little bit, but I don't want it to be absolutely destroyed. I hope that we're able to accomplish that. So now let's put the casserole together. So we've got that over there. I'm going to come over here. Yet another casserole dish. This has also been sprayed with nonstick spray. I'm going to take a big spoon, relatively big spoon, and a little bit of our enchilada sauce. Put a couple of spoonfuls down on the bottom and just spread it out so that our tortillas have a little something to rest on and soak up the flavor all the way from the bottom to the top. So spread that out. And then we're going to take these nice thick corn tortillas, put those on a bottom layer. Don't be afraid to make things fit. Like that and like that. So it doesn't exactly cover the whole bottom, but close enough. And you know what I can do? I can make it work. So here we have almost covering the whole bottom, a couple of little gaps, but that's fine because now we're going to take our filling, and the spinach is exactly how I wanted it to look. Case in point. Look how beautiful this is. That spinach is beautiful, bright green, and it's mixed with the beans and the onions and the pecans and the mushrooms. It's got a really good, toothsome, meaty texture to it. So I'm going to take a nice helping of that and just kind of spread that on top of that one layer, that first layer of corn tortillas. Okay. This is so appetizing and lovely. Wait until you see it. Let me show you. Look how tasty that looks. It's very bright green, very sliding around here. And since we have a little bit of this cheese left, we're going to spoon a little bit more sauce on top of the filling, kind of just spread it over the top. It's going to taste so good, that green chili with the pecans and the spinach and all of those spices. Keeping in mind, one of the reasons I didn't go crazy with the spices in the filling for this is because this green chili has lots and lots and lots of flavor all on its own. So let's sprinkle just a little bit of this fun vegan cheese down, and then we're going to put another layer of our tortillas. So we're just going to repeat this until everything is all used up. And again, it's not going to be perfect, but if we were seeking perfection, well, let's just say I'm not seeking perfection. And that's a good thing, because then I'd have to hold everybody else to it, and nobody wants that. So spreading this filling all along the bottom there. I think we have enough for 3 layers, which is great. Okay, so there's that. More of the enchilada green chili sauce. As you can see, this is much less labor intensive than taking individual corn tortillas and rolling them up and having them fall apart all over the inside of your casserole dish. I am all for making it easy if that's what has to happen. And you know, if you don't like enchiladas or somebody else doesn't, you can still make this and call it tamale pie and nobody will be the wiser. And if you don't like cheddar or if you don't like green chili, if you have a red enchilada sauce that you prefer, they sell enchilada sauce canned. You know they sell corn tortillas that have already been made. You certainly don't have to do what I've done here, but it's possible to make this stuff, make it easily. I just happen to like making tortillas, so I decided I would. So you can see I'm just fitting the tortillas in here, however best they'll go. Okay, almost done, because I don't think I'm going to have any more filling after this layer goes on. Cut that over there. One more hefty layer of filling. Speaking of filling, this is going to be a very filling casserole because the corn tortillas are really very substantial. The beans and the pecans and the onions and the spinach are very chunky, very hefty, very filling. Okay. Just spread the rest of that right over the top of those tortillas. Okay. A little more sauce. So this uses almost exactly, this is about 2 cups worth of sauce, which is handy because that's how much I froze. It was handy that that's how much I needed. And about a can, if you're buying the canned enchilada sauce, about a can would do it for you, I think. So the rest of that sauce goes in there. And let's just finish off all of this cheese, shall we? I like a casserole with a big finish, and to me, a big finish means cheese, even if it is fake cheese. All right, and you know what? Let's see. I can do a side-by-side comparison. The vegan cheese that proved not to melt also well, and the vegan cheese that claims that it melts pretty well. I'll do both. And that way I get rid of all of my vegan cheese. I can start fresh with another brand and report back. So here is our green enchilada spinach casserole, also very hefty. But before I put that in, I'm going to take the buffalo one out and let's see what we've got. I'm excited. Okay. Go right here. Over here. Oh boy. Well, I'm not seeing a whole lot of meltage going on from this stuff either, at least not in a dry environment, but it did melt in the sauce. Oh my gosh. This looks very convincing, I must say. So let's put the enchilada casserole in, since we've taken the buffalo casserole out. And I'm just going to taste just a tiny, tiny little bit of this stuff because I simply cannot wait. So, but first let me show it to you in all of its glory. I know you can't see the delightful crispy looking top with the little tofu bits and everything. Look at that. Look, with the green onions and the little crispies and everything. Oh, I can't wait. The cheese didn't quite melt, but it looks very cheesy. So we'll see. So I'm getting a piece that has a little bit of everything. Oops. Oh, very juicy. Yum. Yum, yum, yum. We got the broccoli, we got the crispy bits, we got the tofu in there, onions. The moment of truth for this fabulous looking casserole has arrived. So let's see. I want to get some of the crispy top. I want to get a green onion in there. Yes, there you are. And I want to get some cauliflower and some tofu there. I think I have the perfect bite right here, except for that I just dropped the cauliflower from it. Come here, you little rascal. Okay, here we go. Go away. I'm eating. This is very rich. And it does taste cheesy. And it's very spicy, partly because of the cauliflower. It was, remember, roasted with some cayenne, partly because of the tofu, which has some wing sauce in there, mostly because of the sauce that has all that wing sauce in there. But the flavors all work together really beautifully. This is, you know, I'm not going to lie to you. There is nothing like real dairy macaroni and cheese, but this is as close as I've come to finding anything that I would accept as a substitute. I think part of it has to do with the fact that it is spicy, and that it does incorporate those other buffalo flavors that I like in there. But I think you could serve this to just about anyone who likes spicy food, and you would be good to go. So we don't have time to see how the second casserole is going to turn out for this class, but I will take pictures of it when it comes out of the oven and let you know how it turned out. In the meantime, I encourage you to give this a try, especially if you have people maybe that you're going to serve food to. If you're thinking about going plant-based and you're not sure where to start with something that looks like something you would eat ordinarily. If you like eating macaroni and cheese, find a good macaroni and not cheese recipe and go from there. If you like buffalo wings, go for something kind of buffalo flavor and go from there. Or if you're inviting people over and you want to kind of introduce them to the world of plant-based, go with something that's familiar and generally pretty well liked, and then see what happens. So thank you all for joining me this evening. We'll be back next week with our next quarantine cooking, whatever that ends up being. I'll post pictures of our second casserole just as soon as it's out of the oven. And in the meantime, have a very good and safe and healthy week, and I'll see you all soon. Good night.